I had tried to quit so many times on my own. I tried to quit smoking weed. I couldn't do it. I tried meth. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't stop. Once I got started on a substance, I really couldn't stop. And I don't know what that lure, I don't know what that power. I mean, I understand it now as addiction, and these pathways that get ingrained in your brain. But at the time, you don't have a full understanding of what's happening. You just know that you have a love for a substance that is stronger than any love you've ever had before. And I knew at that point that I was going to be on my way to prison.
Before the video starts, I know you're sick of people asking you to subscribe to their channel, but it would really help me out if you did. Just click the red subscribe button. It's free, no spam emails, and it lets me and my guests know you appreciate what we're doing. Thanks. So you've done a lot. Like, you're at Stanford right now, you got a PhD, you're involved in ban the box movements, unlock higher ed, just so many different things. But before all of that, you had a rough sort of life, and that has actually played a big role in what you're doing in terms of research and your career now. So if you could share with us a little bit about what life was like leading up to incarceration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an honor to be here. It is, I'm really just, I think, inspired just by all of the things that I see happening around the post-incarceration movement in general right now. And so it really is just cool to be in this space right now. And so kind of diving back into what led to prison for me, I didn't grow up in an overly policed neighborhood. I don't have, a huge, we never, as a kid, I never wanted for food, or, we never had Xboxes or anything like that, but I just didn't come from poverty. I came from like lower middle class America. And in my early 20s were when things started kind of going off the rails for me. And a lot of my story has to do with addiction. Without understanding addiction, you really can't understand the story and the trajectory of my life. I come from a family of alcoholics and people that struggled with addiction issues. And I think the crazy thing about that is that just becomes normal in your life. And so it's hard to recognize what not normal is. And so, when you're dealing kind of with your own mental health issues, and then your family has mental health issues, it makes it very difficult to, recognize that there's things that are definitely wrong there. And so I too, like a lot of my family members, struggled with addiction. And I would say, again, this is only really in hindsight, I think I'm able to kind of capture, I think, what happened for me, because there was a long period of my life where I didn't really even use drugs or alcohol. But right around 22 years old, I had a daughter, and my daughter was an incredible addition to my life. But me and her mom were high school sweethearts. And, we broke up right after she was born. And not only did we break up, but it was I'd never been through any kind of like emotional turmoil like that. I'd never lost a loved one. I'd never, just gone through that kind of emotional turmoil. And so that was really, I would say, the catalyst to that you often hear, that downward spiral of addiction, that emotional turmoil that I didn't have a coping mechanism for. I just didn't know how to deal with that. And so, I would say that my drug and alcohol use really ramped up at that point. And when you're in it, it's hard to see an issue kind of taking place. I had recently started my own business. And so I think I had, at least from my friends and family, I had built up quite a bit of benefit of the doubt. So even as things were kind of falling apart around me, I was really able to kind of fake it. And it wasn't until, everything kind of collapsed that I was really, forced to kind of make a decision where, do I get help or do I kind of go down this other road of, committing crimes to keep my addiction going. And I chose the other road. And so that's really was the kind of the catalyst. I ended up addicted to methamphetamine, kind of not just dabbling, but being very I don't even want to say lucrative, but, becoming almost like a professional at identity theft. And that really just kind of ended up badly. Like I knew that it probably would. It ended in a 7-year prison sentence, which was, where I kind of found myself in my late 30s. And so that's what led up to my personal journey into prison.
So addiction is a running theme of many people who have been incarcerated or even impoverished in different ways. So you were in your 20s and you didn't have a family structure or anything who was in and out of prison that could give you any kind of forewarning, I guess, about what prison would be like and what the future looked like for you in terms of consequences. You already had a daughter, and a family unit. So going into prison, what was that experience like for you? Many people who grew up in impoverished environments and gangs and things like that see prison as a rite of passage, but in your case, that wasn't the case. It was very different for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent quite a bit of time. I think one thing that really helped me was that I spent quite a bit of time in the county jail. I went to trial. I took my case to trial. And that 18, 20 months, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it allowed me to meet a lot of people that were on their way to prison. And I knew at that point that I was going to be on my way to prison. I had pretty much exhausted all hopes that I wouldn't end up going to prison in that last jail stint. And so, I was able to really, and that was kind of maybe even the start of it, without knowing it, that was the start of my research career, is that I just kind of started asking questions or probing people about, what can I expect when I get to prison? And so the two things that I heard the most were don't get a gambling debt and don't get a drug debt. And so what that meant to me is that it would probably be a good idea at this point to stop, to embrace the idea of stopping using drugs and alcohol for at least while I was in prison.
Right.
And so those two, and those they were great advice, because that's how I saw people kind of get hemmed up and really get into trouble, was going into debt with different groups of people or just even different people. And so I took that to heart. The other thing too is that you just kind of, just learn the ropes before you get there. And so by the time I got to prison, I knew so many people that I had met in the county jail that were already there, that knew my case, that knew what kind of I was about. That transition for me was actually very, I don't even want to say smooth, but it was, I didn't run into some of the problems I saw that other people kind of ran into, where they got to prison and didn't know anybody. I had a good group of people that I had met before I got there. And so I think that really, really helped me. I knew really the minute I stepped off the van and into the fish tank that I wanted to use this opportunity to try and improve my self as much as I possibly could while I was there. I didn't know what that looked like, but that was really kind of my goal.
Was it difficult for you coming off of drugs? Were you at the point where your body was craving it and you went through withdrawals, or was it more psychological? What was that experience like, just making the commitment to come off of it?
It was, okay, so, and I mentioned this already, but it was for me, like I knew it was just going to have to end badly. It was going to be a really life-jarring moment, because I had tried to quit so many times on my own. I tried to quit smoking weed. I couldn't do it. I tried meth. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't stop. Once I got started on a substance, I really couldn't stop. And I don't know what that lure, I don't know what that power, I mean, I understand it now as addiction, and these pathways that get ingrained in your brain. But at the time, you don't have a full understanding of what's happening. You just know that you have a love for a substance that is stronger than any love you've ever had before. And so I didn't really truly understand what that was. And I think that anyone that struggles with addiction would always tell you that, that first 2 years, like, if I wouldn't have been in jail, I would have been for sure right back out there using drugs. It was just, there were drugs in the jail, but it wasn't to the extent where it would have been very difficult for me to really even gain the money to be able to get them. And it just wasn't something that I wanted to really an area that I wanted to get involved with. And so I really had kind of, looked down. I still remember the day I was arrested and looking down at the floorboard of the police cruiser and saying, like, what's next? And so I kind of took that mentality and was like, okay, well, give this a shot and give this, whole not using drugs and alcohol a shot. And so, but that first 2 years, man, again, if I would have gotten out, I probably would have went right back to using it. It may have taken a couple of weeks or maybe even a few months, but I would have given myself permission at some point. It wasn't until I reached that, I would say the 3-year point. I'd been at the prison for probably about a year and a half, I would say. And so it was about that 3-year point that those cobwebs had been, I would say, lifted, or those, and what I know they are now is these pathways in my brain that had been overridden by drugs and alcohol. And, those just take time to heal. And so it took about 3 years for that to happen. And then from there on, it was really just a psychological thing, right? I would go through triggers and these very acute or short-term withdrawals or cravings, but never to the point where it was like those first few years.
Yeah. And so you attended college while you were in prison? So tell me about that, because that's something that's really taken over a lot of your goals and your calling in life now, is to help people incarcerated and formerly incarcerated get an education. So what sparked your interest or inspired you to get involved in education while you were locked up?
Man, it's such a, all this stuff just happens a lot of times so much on coincidence, right? It's just like when you get out, it's a lot about who you know and connections that you make and networks that you become involved with. I made a friend early on in prison. His name was Keith Brooks, and he ran the tutoring program up in the high school in the prison. And so I chatted with him. I said, hey, I need a job. I don't want to be a porter. I would love to come up and work with you in the school. So he got me a job as his assistant, helping with the adult learning program, very basic learning program. Many students with disabilities, many students with learning issues that were, kind of beyond the norm. And so a lot of, again, very basic education courses, spelling and really basic math. And I made friends up there, and I met the principal. And so the principal, at one point, one of the clerks for the principal had done something that kind of got him hemmed up. And so he was let go from his position. And I just advocated for myself with the principal, like, you kind of know what I'm about. I would really love to kind of take over this position in the school as your clerk. So I got a job sending out mail and getting people's transcripts so that they could finish, so that they could use those credits that they had already earned in their high schools on the outside, on the inside through the adult high school. And so that experience, I'd been there for about 6 months, and that was when they brought in the college and prison program. So it was just kind of being in the school and kind of knowing what was happening that got me involved. But it was really just a lot of networking that I did, I think, really early on, and knowing that education was really going to be the key and the catalyst for any kind of future that I had when I got out.
There are several people I've talked to who their educational journey was sort of, they just knew the right people, or, were influenced to go. It wasn't necessarily like, a spark of intuition or anything that led them in that direction. But I'm glad it did for you, because you've done so much since then. So after being released from prison, you continue to pursue your education, and that has landed you in a great spot. So I do want to ask about like collateral consequences you encountered, sure. But tell us a little bit about your educational journey post-release.
I mean, and it started the day I got out. I had my dad, well, I should say the day after I got out. My parents picked me up. By that time, I had gotten to fire camp up in Winnemucca, Nevada. And my parents had picked me up from there. They had moved to the eastern side of Washington. It's about an 8-hour drive away. And it's just such a weird, it was a weird car drive and just so invigorating. And I told my dad on that car drive, I said, I need you to take me to the local community college. I didn't even know what it was at the time. I need you to take me there tomorrow, and absolutely do not come and get me until I've called you and told you that I have signed up for school. Because if I don't do that, I don't know what my future looks like. That's my goal kind of coming out. And I knew I wanted, at that point, I thought my goal was that I wanted to become a drug and alcohol counselor because I'd found recovery. And I knew that as a potential career path that I could, potentially maybe use my lived experience to help other people, but also I think more importantly have a career. And so my dad dropped me off. I got signed up for school. I made an appointment with the counselor that kind of ran that substance abuse disorder curriculum, AA degree, and met with her. And she told me, like, I've seen people with worse records than yours get out and do well. And then the other thing that I, and I always look back on this experience too, is that at that community college, I did not see a box for criminal history. And I was prepared for it too, but I did not see a box for criminal history question. That didn't ask about it. And I never ever forgot about that experience and how that barrier was removed for me. So I met with the counselor. Those words, all it took was, I've seen people with worse records than yours get jobs and get licensed. That was all the hope that I needed in that moment. And so I knew that I wanted to enroll in school. I got enrolled in school. I ended up becoming a drug and alcohol counselor. I'm glad I had that experience because I learned very, very quickly that really the treatment system in America, at least where I was offering treatment, was really just an extension of the criminal justice system. And that really did not sit well with me. And I didn't like my job as, basically police officer to individuals where you had to give them UAs. And that was, to me, was not treatment. When you were reporting their progress to it was just, I don't want to go on a tangent here, but I'll just say that it wasn't really treatment. And so luckily at that point, I was surrounding myself with people that were inspiring me to go on, get a bachelor's degree, get and think about graduate school. I met who would become my mentor while I was in my 4-year degree program they have a Washington State University satellite campus that was just down the road from the community college that I was at. And so I enrolled there, and it was there that I really got involved in research and really just got enthralled, I would say, with research and passionate about research. And I can't really explain it. It's like, some people have a knack for creating music and hearing tempo and all that. I don't have that, but what I do is I have a knack for research. I have a knack for understanding, like, modeling of statistics, and that just for some reason it just kind of clicked with me. I didn't really have a knack for writing, but I've grown that. I've grown to be at least somewhat prolific in writing. I definitely don't have expertise in it, but I've been able to create just enough to be able to write fairly well, but use the really important part to me, which is the modeling and stuff like that. And so I knew I just knew that I wanted those 3 letters after my name, those PhD letters after my name, after I kind of got involved in research. And so, and again, everything really from there is a lot to do with coincidence, being lucky in certain situations, a lot of really hard work, obviously, as well. No one gets into graduate school. No one, progresses through graduate school without a lot of hard work and sacrifice, of your family, of your loved ones, of, a lot of things that are important in life, but you do sacrifice for some time. And so, but it was, that those 4 years or 5 years of graduate school were, life-changing for me. It was a chance for me to, take my loves, right? A love for understanding addiction, my love for modeling and statistics, and then, my newfound love for science, I think, in general. It was just a great opportunity. And, the position that I have at Stanford today, it's, I pinch myself every single day because it just doesn't seem real. If you'd have told me 10 years ago, if you'd have put 100 different things on a board and said, all these are possibilities for your future, this would be probably one of the last things that I would have chosen out of those 100.
Right. So you finished the PhD, and what is your PhD in?
It's in experimental psychology.
And so now you're doing research at Stanford, and exclusively focused on addiction, or what are some of your research interests?
Yeah, so I have 3, and this was something that was told to me very, very early on. Don't put it's just like the advice for investing. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And so people were, again, I had great mentorship along the way. I think that is something that gets missed in a lot of times in PhD programs, is that the power of that mentorship and the advice those mentors give you is so, so important. But that advice early on was, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I've really always tried to have at least 2 or 3 kind of research areas so that, if I get bored in one, or if one is just all of a sudden not being funded through the agencies that fund these programs, at least you have something to kind of fall back on. So those 3 areas, the first would be kind of the love that I gained in graduate school, which was really the intersection of mental health and substance use disorder in a whole host of populations, criminal justice, college students, people seeking treatment. But I've always been interested from my very early days of being in prison and seeing so many people around me in prison that had mental health issues and had substance use disorder issues, always just kind of a driving force. So that has always been one focus. With my PhD program, I became, I would say, an expert. I hate to use that word, but I gained expertise in cluster modeling, a statistical technique that clusters individuals into groups, patterns based on their responding patterns, rather than into groups like our preconceived groups like gender or any kind of treatment, non-treatment. This is a technique that allows that data to tell us how these people are grouping together. That has been very, very, I would say, I don't know if lucrative is the right word, but it's allowed me to be very prolific and very productive in writing. I think I have 5 or 6 first author papers that just use that technique, and it's all in data sets either with NIDA or with the Veterans Health Administration. So it's been a really great technique for me to kind of capitalize and use that expertise to contribute to science. And then I would say more of a new area for me is trying to understand programming and services available for students in recovery. And so I just recently wrote a K award to ideally be able to study collegiate recovery programs for the next 5 years. And so that's a new area. It's going to be a qualitative project, and I'm hoping that it is funded here within the next few months.
Well, so one of the things that I have experienced is that even though I've accomplished education, I've met, politicians and powerful people, I've done some important things in the Texas prison system, it doesn't matter in a lot of ways when it comes to the fact that I have felony convictions. I try to get an apartment. They don't care about all this stuff I've done. They just see the black and white and, barred from any number of opportunities. So what kind of collateral consequences or challenges have you faced since you've been out?
Yeah. It's such a large topic to try and hone in on, in just even, 5-minute answer. It's the collateral consequences are, they're very, very frustrating. And I think that, just like you, every time I go, I cringe. Every time I go to try and think about getting an apartment, do I want to put it in my wife's name? Like just all of these things where I just don't even want to deal with it anymore.
Yep.
And now I'm really, I think I'm blessed that I have, so much on the other side now where, when people Google my name, it's very hard to find the bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's very easy. The stuff that comes up now is the good stuff. But like you said, it doesn't matter when someone runs a credit check or a background check, they're coming right back to that information. And so it is very, very frustrating. I know that I, as a one person formerly incarcerated, will never be able to change the system on my own. And I think that's why the work around Ban the Box in higher education has been so important and so just fulfilling for me, is because I know that work allows people to get into spaces, whether that's getting into college, which is going to transform their mind and their lives. It allows people with incarceration histories to just even start that process. Whether or not that takes hold or not is really not up to me. It's up to that individual. But the more people that we can get into college that have this lived experience, the more people that are eventually going to filter up to positions of power, because that's just the way our society works, is that unfortunately or fortunately, most of the time, social mobility and politicians are able to achieve that through a college degree. And so the more that we can lift people up into those positions of power, those political positions, those are what's going to change the world. And so I won't change the world, but I know that work is just planting that seed and creating that fertile soil so that individuals can kind of grow into those and I that's why I love coming to the different conferences that kind of feature people that are formerly incarcerated, because it's proof positive that is happening, and we'll hopefully see real change in the next few years.
Yeah, this is a very unique, the whole formerly incarcerated, our role in higher ed, our role in legislation and just society is unique in our history. And there are people like yourself who have risen up to levels where you have a place of power to say certain things and help get things done. You've done that with like Unlock Higher Ed and Ban the Box, and just your role in so many other areas, formerly incarcerated college grads. That's just pretty amazing. So, I look forward to continuing to be your colleague in all of this and supporting whatever work you've got going on. Yeah,
it's my pleasure, Brandon. I mean, since, we met 4 years ago, it's always just great to see everyone's journey. I mean, that conference 4 years ago absolutely changed my life. And I gained so many lifelong friends that I didn't even know were already, I mean, they had been friends for a long time, and I just didn't get a chance to germinate those friends. And it's been just such a pleasure watching you grow and everyone else grow too.
Yeah, I thank you, because you have stuck by, meeting with me monthly and answering questions while I went through the whole dissertation. And that was amazing. That was pretty amazing. Aside from you, I haven't had another formerly incarcerated person mentor me in that way. So yeah, I thank you. I appreciate for all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's what it's all about.